I want to start this morning with a story retold by Eric Butterworth in the book Unity, A Quest for Truth. He says a little child was stretched out on the floor with paper and crayons. Mama asked, "What are you drawing, dear?" "I am drawing a picture of God," said the child. "But no one knows what God looks like," said the mother. Dashing her crayon at the paper with abandon, the child said, "They will when I get through." They will when I get through. Think of that sense of authority and divine worth to know that they'll know when I get through, pressing forth my vision, my idea, my knowing, my experience. He goes on to say that it is our work to outpicture God, to fulfill God's image and likeness in earth as it is in heaven. He says that Jesus, the master teacher, fully expressed God so in a sense that we can see what God looks like as we look at him. He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. He goes on to say that this leads us quite naturally to consider Jesus, and that Jesus did not come to take the place of God, but rather to show men how they might find God for themselves and within themselves, even as he found God within himself. He talks about that relationship between Jesus and the Christ, and he says that that is the weakest link in the chain of Christian theology. That is the weakest link, the relation between Jesus and Christ. He goes on to talk about that Christ presence, which is that spirit within everyone, which is beyond Christianity, which is in fact the birthright and the birthplace of the source of all life, the source expressing in us, through us, and as us. And that when we miss that part of the teaching, we're looking in the wrong place. When we don't take on our own ability to draw God, we're missing the mark. That little girl had the audaciousness to claim her authority. How often do we let an outer authority tell us what God looks like? How often do we let an outer authority, even life itself, tell us what's right and wrong on the spiritual journey? And how might we be even telling ourselves, with our personal struggle, with our personal expansions and journey on this path, that this isn't what God looks like, or this isn't what awakening looks like? Will humanity know source when you get done drawing your image? A friend shared a story with me about being in a shopping area in the wine section and running into a woman there who was looking for the right bottle of wine. And she was really reading the labels and asking questions about the taste and the type, and really into it, like a foodie is into food, and really wanting to get the right bottle for the right occasion, and not knowing as much as she would like to know about the wine. So this friend, noticing this and noticing she was looking for some support, stepped in and said, I know a bit about this. I know a bit about wine, and so I can support you if you want. I can, tell you about this one, and started going through the different things to try to help her find exactly what she was looking for. So just gracious being in there, supporting. And as it would be, the conversation led after, looking at the different bottles of wine and supporting and having this, interaction of support and kindness. The woman started going into this story about other places, where you hear about wine and experts. And somehow the story led to going into a restaurant. And when you go into a high-end restaurant or any restaurant, and the person that is supporting you and waiting on you tells you their name. And she referred to this and she said, how annoying it is that they share their names with you. And why would I need to know that? She said that it was annoying. I don't care to know your name. Why is it when the servers come up to you? I hate it when they tell you their name. The reason this friend knows so much about wine is because they are a server at a high-end restaurant and have been in and out of that industry for years. Isn't it interesting how the dynamics change when someone in their limited awareness, their limited thinking, thinks that they're on equal playing grounds, an equal playing field. They have some idea of an identity or worth. And when you come from that place of worth, there is kindness, there is compassion, there is a connection, a humanity that exists. But step into the separate sense of self, step into the ego, step into the place where one becomes better than another, where one judges by a pre-existing thought of knowing, by some sort of entitlement. And all of a sudden, the concept of honor, respect, and divine worth can go out the door. Why would I need to know their name? How could you not want to know the divine name of every being on this planet? And if you have not the drive and the power in you to meet someone in the truth of their being with honor and respect, I would argue that you know not your source and you know not yourself. Part of our spiritual calling is to know thyself. Do you know your worth? Do you see others? Do you truly see them? And do you treat them from that vision, from that knowing of who and whose they are, from the knowing of their full worth? Once you know your worth, you see that in all others. And beyond all others, you see that in all life. You see that in the very fabric of this planet itself, into the solar system and the galaxy. You see it to such a degree that you may experience awe and reverence. Until you see others, you cannot know yourself. Until you know both as one, you do not know God. This Sunday marks Palm Sunday. The entrance into Jerusalem, that ride on the donkey of the spiritual teacher that came to remind humanity of its worth, to remind each individual that our worth is not based on human power. It is not based on money. It is not even based on accomplishments. That worth is based on your divine inheritance that was born in you in the mind of God before you even expressed as a human being. Emerson referred to the master teacher's understanding when he said, Jesus Christ belonged to the true race of prophets. He saw with open eyes the mystery of the soul, drawn by its severe harmony, ravished with its beauty. He lived in it, and he had his being there. Alone in all history, he estimated the greatness of man. One man was true to what is in you and what is in me. One man was true, he says, to what is in you and what is in me. That idea that the awakening happens when you recognize what is true in all of humanity. So why is this so radical? Why is this such a threatening teaching? Have you noticed that the people that stand in this teaching are cast out? This teaching is so radical because it overturns the establishment. It takes people away from their pre-assigned value station because it doesn't enforce and support ideas of war and power, but rather it teaches a liberation theology. It teaches self-worth. And that is so threatening, it can cause a crucifixion on the outer and on the inner. Have you ever noticed that when you start to dive into the spiritual journey, you start to embrace your worth, that anything unlike it can come up and be in your face? That in fact you can get counter examples? That the more you dive into the spiritual path, the more you can see the opportunity to fall away from that and to believe little ideas, to buy into fears. Counter examples will arise as the conversation of our divine inheritance, of our true worth, expands. As we press forth ideas that there is no such thing as an illegal human being, that there is no such possibility that anyone could be any less or in any way not equal to anyone else. The ego mind and the collective ego mentality gets enraged. It gets enraged because this is the one teaching, the liberation teaching, the one teaching that will strip all outer structures of their power and leave the power where it truly exists, which is within the hearts of all beings. Do you know your worth, or are you waiting for it to be offered to you? Martin Luther King says, don't allow anybody to make you feel like you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. Always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Do we have experiences where we don't feel like that is true? Are we willing to engage in the possibility that when we fail to believe that is true, we are exporting our power to an external source? Abraham Maslow said the highest quality that a human being can reach is to be independent of the good opinions of others. To be independent of the good opinions of others. Can you challenge your spirit to yield to this light within? The master teacher taught us that a true king, that true power comes in the form of a prince of peace, gentle and unassuming, riding in on a donkey to the metaphysical center of peace. What is important in our metaphysical teachings is to focus on how these events, how this consciousness recount and create an internal, interior experience. How these archetypes come in within ourselves, come up within ourselves to be healed, to be experienced, to be overcome. Zig Paulson, who was a minister in this very sanctuary and one of Unity's greatest teachers, talked about the dawn of truth. He said, man is an unfinished product, a still growing creature, a god in unfoldment. He lives in a universe whose elements, including his own ignorance, first challenge his spirit, then yield to it. He has come through the ages of bondage, ignorance, superstition, violence, and wars of all kinds. He has been a bull in a china shop of creation, yielding fantastic powers destructively in a dark night of preparation to become what he really is, the self-expression of the infinite. To become what he really is, the self-expression of the infinite. He has lived in a hell of separation, separation from his source, separation from his fellow man, separation from the good. Every element of his being cries out to experience. But the light of truth is dawning rapidly in human consciousness. He says, the light seemingly reserved for the enlightened is becoming the common or extraordinary property of all mankind. The unenlightened religion, science, business, education, society, politics are all passing into the wastebasket of discarded relics of human bondage. Amen? He says, after ages of living on the husks of materialistic beliefs, man is finally like the prodigal son coming home to himself. So why is this still so radical? Why is this still so threatening? Deepak Chopra, one of the leading New Thought authors, says that the second coming has been especially destructive to Jesus' intentions because it postpones what needs to happen now. It postpones what needs to happen now. And no doubt, some of the misleading ideologies that have been spoken about in Christianity, which was not the language or the voice or the religion of Jesus, right? Jesus was a Jew, have not honored his teaching. They have not honored his teaching in the way that when he taught, he pointed to the worth in everyone around him. He overturned and dismantled the structures of oppression that were both external and internal. This is still radical. Zig goes on to say, the revelation of Jesus Christ is that man is the light of the world. The kingdom or nature of God is within the individual. That each one is the son or descendant of the Most High. And that the authority that is to govern the unfoldment of man in this age is resident within you and me as the Spirit of truth. Everyone who disbelieves this revelation, he says, commits sin and is slave to that sin. But the light reveals that this slavery is only temporary, because when the son state is the permanent fact of man's being, the sonship, the sonhood, when this is the permanent fact of man's being, and when the individual enters that realization of his or her true identity, they will indeed be free. He will begin to experience the new birth, or at least the conception and pregnancy that precedes the coming forth of a new creature amidst the wreckage of the old one. This spiritual process is being present to what feels like the wreckage and what we know is the resurrection. Yet this idea is still radical. The idea that we are given authority, that in fact it's okay to say, when I get through drawing my picture, they will know. It's so radical because these teachings overthrow human measure of worth, value, and power. And let's remember that the only reason kings have power, the only reason money has power, is because we believe in it. The only thing that can have power is what we believe in. And the master teacher and other spiritual teachers throughout the ages have taken on the task of drawing humanity's eyes from the illusions of power to the belief in divine authority, not the authority that can be given to anyone or manipulated by human conditions, human structures, churches, systems, but that which is our divine birthright. Some called this teaching a great disappointment, because that ego idea that true power needs to match up with control and authority and dominance. But the master teacher thought that that worldly power was nothing, and taught that that worldly power was nothing, and demonstrated that that worldly power was nothing. He demonstrated a new value system and demonstrated spiritual mastery, and showed all beings how they can attain that spiritual mastery and create according to a new paradigm. And this was radical. This, friends, still is radical. It's still a threat. He taught a new you. He taught that there was a new and deeper sense of self, an I am nature, and that I am nature is not separate from source, and that we are more secure and safe in that nature than we could ever be in the forms of the human condition, that we could ever be in the illusory idea that power systems, structures, money, bank accounts could protect us. That in fact there is a system deep within which is the only safe space. And that is the spiritual practice. That is the knowing that wisdom is everywhere present. That is the knowing that love is everywhere present, and that we tune into it within our own hearts. And that it is given equally to all of us. And that in fact, when we tap into it, it cannot be diminished. It is not like a natural resource that can be grabbed and hoarded and used up. That in fact, the more we use, the more we have to give. That's a radical idea that liberates. He taught a new God. He taught a new God. Zig refers to Jesus' view of God as the changeless, animating spirit behind all things. The changeless, animating spirit behind all things. And that knowing that everyone who listens to this spirit, everyone who listens to the I am nature is listening to the voice of truth. I was walking the halls of Agape this week, listening to a conversation as I walked by where one was sharing with another these words. He said, "Be true to yourself because yourself is truth." Be true to yourself because yourself is truth. True freedom comes by teaching and knowing your worth. And knowing this worth dismantles all systems of oppression within us and among us. And in fact, modeling this changes the world. Buckminster Fuller said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." This is why the practice of awakening is a radical idea. This is why it is a threat to the systems. It is drawing a new image, not only of God light, God energy, God mind, but of humanity, of you and of me, and what is possible on the spiritual path and in this human condition. So tomb time, friends, is not something that just happened 2,000 years ago. Tomb time has become yours. The ride to the city of peace is not just a story from 2,000 years ago. The ride to the city of peace is our spiritual journey itself unfolding within our being. And the crossing out of error thinking and limitation is not just something applicable to 2,000 years ago. It is the living spiritual practice here and now, today. Zig Paulson says, "You are a vital part of an evolutionary program that has never stopped, and your future role in this program is up to you. The wonderful thing about this experience is that there is no book that has been written, not even the Bible itself, that can describe what is going to happen, that can tell you exactly what your understanding is going to be, that can put into words this working knowledge. Once you have reached this point where you are ready to go directly to the light within you, you begin to draw on your own inner Bible, the law written on your inward parts, the outer Bible phrasing it. This does not mean," he says, "that there is no value in books and in teachings and in religious institutions and other efforts to help humanity. It means that you must ultimately come to the point in your own individual unfoldment where you are willing to go beyond the book, beyond the institution, beyond the human opinion, into a direct experience of the light. No one else can take this path for you. No one else can really walk it with you. And yet, all enlightened souls of eternity walk with you when you begin your inner journey." Namaste.